I heard Susan was having a party this weekend while her parents were out of town. Oh yeah? Any of us invited? Nope, just the popular kids, the jocks, few of the popular academics, no one from our bunch. Sounds like a special guest might be needed then. We were all sitting in the back of Mrs. Smith's history class, so the nod was almost uniform. Around us, people were talking about Susan's party. Why shouldn't they be? Susan Masterson was one of the most popular girls in school, after all. But they were all talking about the mysterious events that had surrounded the last 4 parties hosted by popular kids. The figure that kept infiltrating these parties was part of that mystery. Nobody knew who they were. Nobody saw them commit their heinous deeds, but the results were always the same. Sometimes it was on the living room floor. Sometimes it was in the kitchen on the snack table. Sometimes it was in the top of the toilet in her parents' bathroom, a place that no one was supposed to have been. No matter where it was, someone always found poop at the party. Do you still have any of those candles left? I asked Tina, running a hand over my gelled-up hair to make sure the spikes hadn't drooped. Yeah, found a place in the barrio that sells them, but they're becoming hard to track down. I could only get about a dozen of them. A dozen is more than enough, Cooper said. With a dozen, we can hit 6 more parties at least. Pretty soon, Mark said, they'll learn not to snub us. Pretty soon, they'll learn that we hold the fate of their precious parties. The bell rang then, and we rose like a flock of ravens and made our way out of class. The beautiful people scoffed at us as we walked up the hall, saying things like, "There goes the coven," and "Hot Topic must be having a going out of business sale." But they would learn better soon. Before long, they would learn that we were the lords of this school, because we controlled that which made them shiver. I've never been what you'd call popular. I've probably been more of what you'd call a nerd since about the 2nd grade. Don't get me wrong, I was a nerd before that, but that was about the time that my peers started to notice. They commented on my thick glasses, my love of comic books, and the fact that I got our class a pizza party every year off just the books that I read. Suddenly, it wasn't so cool to be seen with the nerd. I found my circle of friends shrinking from grade to grade, and it wasn't until I got to high school that I found a regular group of people to hang out with. Incidentally, that was the year I discovered that I liked dressing goth. My colorful wardrobe became a lot darker, and I started 9th grade with a new outlook on life. My black boots, band t-shirts, and ripped black jeans had made me stand out, but not in the way I had hoped. I went from being a nerd to a freak, but I discovered that the transformation wasn't all bad. Suddenly, I had people interested in getting to know me, and that was how I met Mark, Tina, and Cooper. I was a sophomore now, and despite some things having changed, some things had stayed the same. We all acted like we didn't care that the popular kids snubbed us and didn't invite the nerds or the freaks to their parties, but it still didn't feel very good to be ostracized. We were never invited to sit with them at lunch, never asked to go to football games or events, never invited to Spirit Week or homecoming, and the more we thought about it, the more that felt wrong. That was when Tina had come up with something special. Tina was a witch, not the fake wands and butterbeer kind of witch, but the kind with real magic. She had inherited her aunt's grimoire, a real book of shadows that she'd used when she was younger, and Tina had been doing some hexes and curses on people that she didn't like. She'd given Marcy Graves that really bad rash before homecoming, no matter how much she wanted to say it was because she was allergic to the carnation that Gavin had got her. She had caused Travis Brown to trip in that hole and lose the big game that would have taken us to state, too. People would claim that it was just a coincidence, but we all knew better. So, when she came to us and told us she had found something that would really put a damper on their parties, we had been stoked. "Susan's party is tomorrow," Tina said, checking her grimoire as we walked to art class. "So, if we do the ritual tomorrow night, we can totally ruin her party." Some of the popular girls, Susan among them, looked up as we passed, but we were talking too low for them to hear us. She mouthed the words freaks, but I ignored her. She'd see freaks tomorrow night when her little party got pooped on. We spent art class discussing our own gathering for tomorrow. After we discovered the being in Tina's book, we never called what we did parties anymore. They were gatherings now. It sounded more occult. We weren't some dumb airheads getting together for beer and hookups. We were a coven coming together to make some magic. This was bigger than anything these guys could think of. "Cooper, you bring the offering and the snacks," Tina said. Cooper made a face. "Can I bring the drinks instead? Bringing food along with the offering just seems kind of gross." Tina thought about it before nodding. "Yeah, good idea. And be sure to wash your hands after you get the offering." Cooper nodded. "Good, because I still have Bacardi from last time." "Mark, you bring the snacks then," Tina said. "And don't forget to bring the fennel weed. We need it for the ritual." Mark nodded. "Mr. Dakar said that I could bring the leftover chicken at the end of my shift, so I hope that's okay." That was fine with us. The chicken Mark brought was always a great end to the ritual. "Cool, that leaves the ipecac syrup and the X-lax from you, my dear," she said, smiling at me as my face turned a little red under my light foundation. Tina and I had been an item for a couple of weeks, and I still wasn't quite used to it. I'd never had a girlfriend before then, and the giddy feeling inside me was at odds with my goth exterior. Tina was cute, and she was the de facto leader of our little coven. It was kind of cool to be dating a real witch. "So, we all meet at my house tomorrow before 10. Agreed?" We all agreed, and the pact was sealed. The next night, Friday, I arrived at 6, so Tina and I could hang out before the others got there. Her parents were out of town again, which was cool because she never had to make excuses for where she was going. My parents thought I was spending the night at Mark's. Cooper's parents thought he was spending the night at Mark's, and Mark's mom was working a third shift, so she wasn't going to be home to answer any questions if they called to check in. It was a perfect storm, and we were prepared to be at the center of it. Tina was already setting up the circle and making preparations, but she broke off when I came in with my part of the ritual. We were both a little out of breath when Cooper arrived an hour later, and after hurriedly getting ourselves back in order, he came in with 2 12-packs. "Swipe these from my uncle. He's already drunk, so he'll never miss them. I think he just buys them for the 20-year-olds he's trying to bang anyway." "As long as you brought the other thing, too," Tina said, "unless you mean to make it here." Cooper rolled his eyes and handed over a grungy Tupperware with a severe-looking lid on it. "I got it right here, don't worry." He helped us with the final prep work, and we were all on our 1000th game of Mario Kart by the time Mark got there at 9. He smelled like grease and chicken and immediately went to change out of his work clothes. I didn't know about everyone else, but I secretly loved that smell. Mark was self-conscious about smelling like fried chicken, but I liked it. If I thought it was a smell I wouldn't become blind to after a few weeks, I'd probably ask him to get me a job at Colonel Register's Chicken Chateau, too. Cooper tried to reach in for some of the chicken, but Tina smacked his hand. "Ritual first, then food." Cooper gave her a dark look, but nodded as we headed upstairs. It was time to ruin another Amber Zombie and Fitch party. When Tina had showed us the summons for something called the Party Pooper, we had all been a little confused. "The Party Pooper?" Cooper had asked, pointing to the picture of the little man with the long beard and the evil glint in his eyes. "The Party Pooper," Tina confirmed. "He's a spirit of revenge for the downtrodden. He comes to those who have been overlooked or mistreated and brings revenge in their name by," she looked at what was written there, "leaving signs of the summoner's displeasure where it can be found." "Neat," said Cooper. "So how do we summon him?" Turns out the spell was pretty easy. We would need a clay vessel, potions or tinctures to bring about illness from the well, herbs to cover the smell of waste, and the medium by which revenge could be achieved. Once the ingredients were assembled, we would light the candles and perform the chant to summon the Party Pooper to do our bidding. That first time, It had been a kegger at David Frick's house, and we had been particularly salty about it. David had invited Mark, the two of them having science together, and when Mark had seemed thrilled to be invited, David had laughed. "Yeah, right, chicken fry, like I need you smelling up my party." Everyone had laughed, and it had been decided that David would be our first victim. As we stood around the earthen bowl, Tina wrinkled her nose as she bent down to light the candles. "God, Cooper, do you eat anything besides Taco Bell?" Cooper shrugged, grinning from ear to ear. "What can I say? It was some of my best work." The candles came lit with a dark, greasy light. The ingredients were mixed in the bowl, and then the offering was laid atop it. The spell hadn't been specific in the kind of filth it required, but given the name of the entity, Tina thought it best to make sure it was fresh and ripe. That didn't exactly mean she wanted to smell Cooper's poop, but it seemed worth the discomfort. "Link hands," she said, and begin the chant. We linked hands, Mark's as clammy as Tina's were sweaty, and we began to chant. "Every party needs a pooper. That's why we have summoned you. Party pooper. Party pooper." The circle puffed suddenly, the smell like something from an outhouse. The greasy light of the candles showed us the now familiar little man, his beard long and his body short. He was bald, with a head covered in liver spots, and his mean little eyes were the color of old dog turds. His bare feet were black, like a corpse's, and his toes looked rotted and disgusting. He wore no shirt, only long brown trousers that left his ankles bare, and he took us in with weary good cheer. "Ah, if it isn't my favorite little witches! Who has wronged you tonight, children?" We were all quiet, knowing it had been Tina to whom he spoke. The spell had been pretty clear that a crime had to be stated for this to work. The person being harassed by the party pooper had to have wronged one of the summoners in some way for the revenge to be extracted, so we had to find a reason for the summoning. The reason for David had come from Mark, and it had been humiliation. After David had come Frank Gold, and that one had been from Cooper. Frank had cheated him, refusing to pay for an essay he had written, and then having him beaten up when he told him that he would tell Mrs. Bess about it. Cooper had cited damages to his person and debt. The third time had been mine, and it was Margaret Wheeler. Margaret and I had known each other since elementary school, and she was not very popular. She and I had been friends, but when I'd asked her to the Sadie Hawkins dance in 8th grade, she had laughed at me and told me that there was no way she'd be seen with a dork like me. That had helped her get in with the other girls in our grade, and it only served to alienate me further. I had told the party pooper that her crime was disloyalty, and he had accepted that. Now, it was Susan's turn, and we all knew that Tina had the biggest grudge against her for something that had happened in elementary school. "Susan Masterson," Tina intoned. "And how has this Susan Masterson wronged thee?" "She was a false friend who invited me to her house so she could humiliate me." The party pooper thought about this, but didn't seem to like the taste. "I think not," he finally said. There was a palpable silence in the room. "No, has it ever occurred to you that this Susan Masterson may have done you a favor? Were it not for her, you may very well be somewhere else tonight, instead of surrounded by loyal friends." Tina was silent for a moment. This was clearly not going as planned. "No, I think it is jealousy that drives your summons tonight. You are jealous of this girl, and you wish to ruin her party because of it." He floated a little higher over the circle, and I didn't like the way he glowered down at us. "What's more, you have ceased to be downtrodden and mistreated, and I am to blame for this. I have empowered you, made you dependent, and I am sorry for this. Do not summon me again, children, not until you have a true reason for doing such." With that, he disappeared in a puff of foul wind, and we were left standing in stunned silence. It hadn't worked. The party pooper had refused to help us. "Oh well," Cooper said, sounding a little downtrodden. "I guess we didn't have as good a claim as we thought." "Well, let's go eat that chicken," he said, turning to go. "That sucks," Mark said. "Next time we'll need something a little fresher, I guess." They were walking out the room, but as I made to follow them, I noticed that Tina hadn't moved. She was staring at the spot where the party pooper had been, tears welling in her eyes, and as I put a hand on her shoulder, she exhaled a loud, agitated breath. I tried to lead her out of the room, but she wouldn't budge, and I started to get worried. "T, it's okay. We'll try again some other time. Those assholes are bound to mess up eventually, and then we can get them. It's just a matter of time." Tina was crying for real now, her mascara running as the tears fell in heavy black drops. "It's not fair. It's not fair. She let me fall asleep and put my hand in water. She took it away after I wet myself, and I saw the water ring, though. I felt how wet my fingers were, and when she laughed and told the other girls I wet myself, I knew she had done it on purpose. She ruined it. She ruined my chance of being popular. It's not fair. How is my grievance any less viable than you guys?" "Come on, hun," I said. Let's go get drunk and eat some chicken. You'll feel a lot better." I tried to lead her towards the door, but as we came even, she shoved me into the hall and slammed it in my face. Mark and Cooper turned as they heard the door slam, and we all came back and banged on it as we tried to get an answer. Tina, what are you doing? Don't do anything stupid." From under the door, I could see the light of candles being lit, and just under the sound of Mark and Cooper banging, I heard a very familiar chant. "Every party needs a pooper. That's why I have summoned you, party pooper, party pooper." Then the candle lights were eclipsed as a brighter light lit the room. We all stepped away from the door as an otherworldly voice thundered through the house. The party pooper had always been a jovial little creature when we had summoned him, but this time he sounded anything but friendly. The party pooper sounded pissed. "You dare to summon me, mortal? You believe you are owed my power? You believe you are entitled to my aid? See now why they call me the party pooper." There was a sound somewhere between a jello mold hitting the ground and a truckload of dirt being unloaded, and something began to ooze beneath the door. When it popped open, creaking wide with a horror movie slowness, I saw that every surface in Tina's room had been covered in a brown sludge. It covered the ceiling, the walls, the bed, and everything in between. Tina lay in the middle of the room, her body covered in the stuff, and as I approached her, the smell hit me all at once. It was like an open sewer drain, the scent of raw sewage like a palpable blow, and I barely managed to power through it to get to Tina's side. Tina, are you okay?" She said nothing, but when she opened her mouth, a bucket of that foul-smelling sewage came pouring out. She coughed, and more came up. She spent nearly 10 minutes vomiting up the stuff, and when she finally stopped, I got her to her feet and helped her out of the room. "Start the shower. We need to get the stuff off of her." I scrubbed her, taking her sodden clothes off and cleaning the worst of it off her. She was covered in it. It was caked in her ears and her nose, in other places, and it seemed the party pooper had wasted nothing in the pursuit of justice. She still wouldn't speak after that, and I wanted to call an ambulance. She could be really sick, I told them when Cooper said we shouldn't. That stuff was inside her. If we call the hospital, our parents are going to know we lied. In the end, it was a chance I was willing to take. I stayed, Mark and Cooper leaving so they didn't get in trouble. I told the paramedics that she had called me, saying she felt like she was dying, and I came to check on her. They loaded her up and called her parents, but I was told it would be better if I went back home and waited for updates. Tina was never the same after that. Her mother thanked me for helping her when I came to see her, but told me Tina wouldn't even know I was there. She's catatonic. They don't know why, but she's completely lost control of her bowels. She vomits for no reason. She has, I don't know what in her stomach, but they say it's like she fell into a septic tank. She's breathed it into her lungs. It's behind her eyelids. She has infections in her ears and nose because of it, and we don't know what's wrong with her. That was 6 months ago. They put Tina into an institution for someone to take care of her 24/7, but she still hasn't said a word. She's getting better physically, but something is broken inside her. I still visit, hoping to see some change, but it's like talking to a corpse. I still hang out with Mark and Cooper, but I know they feel guilty for not going to see her. In the end, Tina tried to force a revenge with a creature that she didn't understand, and paid the price. So if you think you might have a grievance worthy of the party pooper, do yourself a favor and just let it go. Nothing is worth incurring the wrath of that thing, and you might find yourself in deep shit for your trouble. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story? Or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad and Unicorn Hollow for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our spooky skeleton tier contributors. And thanks to Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Sarah ASMR42, Grim Reaper, and TomBoiTopUwU for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. And a special thanks to Grim Reaper, who appears to have subscribed not just on YouTube, but also on my Patreon. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you, and your support is always appreciated. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon, or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early, at 8:30 a.m., as opposed to 8:30 p.m., my time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one, on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.